I missed something?
No, someone said it wasn't.
We're gonna have a piecemeal recording.
Great question, great presentation. One thing is that this will be available online after, but I just want to make sure that what's recorded. Look at, so they don't have a chance of confusion. So when they say something, oh, it's online.
Okay, great, terrific. We're double checking our recording status here.
We are re-recording again.
Okay. So, sleeping quarters. So again, I was at option 1 has none. Option 2 has a little bit for some storm coverage. Option 3 has accommodations for 4. Kitchen, dining, day room. Again, this scored higher in our previous community feedback from the participants that were present or online. In option 1, it was a shared space with the training space, where options 2 and 3 provide various increasing capacity for that component. Fitness, option 1's got nothing. And option 2 and 3, again, increase in square footage allotment for that. Apparatus space, this is a little bit dicey when we explain it. The apparatus space in the study accommodated all current and future apparatus. Looking forward, probably 20-ish years. Option 1 is really accommodating your current vehicles. Option 2, make sure that we get the trailers that are currently stored outside into inside space. In this option, we are giving a little bit extra room so that you can have some flexibility in future ordering when you replace equipment. And then option 3 gives you a little bit more future growth capacity. And then again, on the firematic support, again, it is a tiered sort of thing where we're addressing some of the primary needs, turnout gear, SCBA, and then building on that as we move forward in the spaces. So again, they build upon one another. The 17,000 that was in the Mitchell Associates report is a good synopsis of a very long-term solution for your department. These give you sort of intermediate steps along the way. And again, if your community doesn't change dramatically, maybe the lifespans that I've indicated could last longer. I don't want anybody in here to think I have a crystal ball. I wish I did. It would make my job a lot easier. But I make the best guess.
More detailed breakdown of what Jeff covered. So each of those specific categories, we go through every single space that was within the program. So in this example, and to a previous question, what is included? Why is there discrepancies between each option? And again, we can compare that back to the 2020 study and existing as well. So the spaces that were included in the program for public and training spaces include a lobby space, meeting training room, table and chair storage, and restrooms. In each of these options, you can see whether or not we are fully meeting the original program element, whether we are partially meeting that through maybe a shared type space, or whether we've reduced the capacity of that type of space, or whether we have not included that space specifically. So this kind of walks you through each individual option, what is included and what is not included.
Okay. And then we look at this from each category, and you can see again, looking at option 1, there's no separate chief's office. Option 2 does have it. Option 3 gives more. If we look at administrative bathrooms, one of the decisions we made right off is looking at the program was to consolidate our bathroom space so that we don't have, public space, private space, with the exception of any bunker restrooms. Those are separated because that's part of the living function. Go ahead.
Also part of this exercise, and Jeff alluded to it earlier, we were looking at what were the actual room requirements of each of these spaces, and if there was a possibility for us to tighten up while still meeting the full programmatic need. So that shared office example that he gave, where if we needed 3 workstations, how could we most efficiently lay out that room? And if we could find a solution that was slightly less square footage, we utilized that square footage. So we're also leaning up the program as well, while still trying to meet the programmatic need.
And here again, option one, you can see there's, very little in the way of sleeping, living quarters. Option two builds on that, and option three gives you more. And then apparatus space. Again, option one, it gives you more appropriately sized bays for your primary response equipment. It does leave your trailers, which are currently outside still. Option two, make sure we get those inside. And then option three gives us more room for future expansion of that equipment as we go farther into the future. And this one gets a little hairy, but again, it is looking at the same equation in terms of how do we satisfy the firematic support equipment. In all cases, for instance, the training mezzanine doesn't match the 2020 program, although there is some capacity. We do accommodate to various levels, different elements in different degrees. Obviously, option three gets the most hits on what we satisfy. On the hot side lockers and hot side, the 2 locker categories, even where we do satisfy that, it is with lesser square footage, trying to be more efficient with our utilization of space. 2 categories that we did not satisfy in any scheme is a separate janitor's closet for the bay side and the ready room. The ready room was an additional space should EMS services return to the fire station. That was identified in the original program. We have not carried that in any of the 3 options.
And again, a lot of the reasoning behind some of this decision-making, we were really leaning back on what were those priorities that we heard and how could we apply all of the feedback that was received.
I will point out before you change that slide, SCBA compressor room is one of those things that I think is very, very important. In all 3 schemes, I did reduce the square footage and leaned up that space. So it is included. I just made it leaner. Again, we're back to this question of how do we find the balance? We've tried to use the feedback that we did receive to make some assessments and judgments on the program. And then, we're trying to solve for the next 10 years with maybe a little bit of vision for what happens. We're not really looking 20 plus, but we are trying to give you some future accommodation in this program. So here's where I have to deliver some unfortunate news. Back in 2020, the cost of the new construction, and let me be very careful about how I say that, was projected at $12 million. That was the number that everybody, was concerned about, which I think ultimately led us to this dialogue. Unfortunately, we have continued to see pretty substantial escalation in the construction market. We've had some pretty rough years in terms of escalation. Right now, the construction market in Massachusetts remains very busy. We have heard from some of our owners, project managers that we work with that on some smaller projects, they're even struggling to get subcontractors engaged. But across the board, we have seen pretty good escalation since 2020. So again, I haven't designed any buildings yet. All I've done is created a program. And there are still things that this community can do to manage budget. But option one, at almost 5,000 square feet less, today we're putting it a range of 10.9 to 12.3 million. Now, the 10.9 is going to lean more towards renovation There may be more things that we can do to sharpen that number in the future. But again, a high level, looking at it, that's the range we're seeing for this kind of work. 12.3 would be new construction. For 14.6 thousand square feet, we're seeing those numbers come in again, based on other projects in Massachusetts in the range of 13.1 to 14.7. And option 3, we're seeing that kind of square footage coming in 14.9 to 16.6. I don't want you to think that there aren't still options available to you, but the 3 program options we derived from the feedback from the last community session, and we've gone through this exercise, this is where we're seeing them right today. Now, the way that you do construction can have an impact on that. You know, again, if you do stick frame, that can bring it down. If you do pre-engineered buildings, that can bring it down. Those are all things that can be explored in a conceptual design exercise. But I would be not faithful to you if I didn't tell you these ranges of what we're seeing in the marketplace today.
So a few additional things to note. When we're talking about escalated costs, we are not actually using today's costs because the project is not being built right now. So these costs are actually escalated out and assume a construction start Q2 of 2024. So next spring. And then those costs are escalated to the midpoint of an assumed construction window. So we say, in theory, the project's not being built today. It's not ready to be built today. If we were to go through a full design process and put a solution out to bid, those subcontractors and contractors would escalate their own costs out to the midpoint of that construction, because that's when they would be purchasing those materials and they would be performing the work. So these costs here are actually escalated out well into late of 2024, assuming a year long of a construction window. So just to give you a sense that this is not today's numbers, these are assuming costs into late 2024.
A change in the market always has an impact on this. You know,
Thanks, Bob.
some of my best performance on bid day have come with downturns in the market. Again, I don't have a crystal ball to project that to know if that's coming or when it would come. The one thing I will say is that in 36 years, even when we've seen downturns at slow economic times, that it tends to rebound and then move back forward at a more rational escalation point. So I would love to say that if you waited, it would go down, but I really have no empirical evidence to support that other than these brief blips, you know, as the market enters a recession. You know, I've had a couple jobs that benefited greatly from that. One down in Virginia that was sitting there with a $13 million estimate. The economy turned down and we ended up with a $9 million project. But those happen rarely.
Another thing to note is this is based on current costs per square foot that we are seeing with like facilities that have either been bid recently or estimated by a third-party estimator recently. One thing that we do always ensure is if we were to move forward with a solution is that we would send the actual design solution, so the actual floor plans, elevations, details, to a third-party estimator at the conclusion of every milestone phase to ensure that we are maintaining and monitoring the project budget. It's really important that we don't generate our own estimates. When you have a number that you know you kind of want to work towards, it's very easy to kind of make that number happen. So we do send that to a third-party estimator who has a much better sense of the market. We tap into all of our contractor partners and see to leverage what they are understanding and know about the market and kind of come up with that third-party opinion of probable cost. And again, as we build in detail to the project, we do that at every phase to ensure that we're staying aligned with whatever budget is determined that we have to stay within. So this is just based on other similar facilities, cost per square foot applied to the programmatic square footage is determined as a part of those options. So this could be refined if a specific solution were to be determined.
So that is a very complicated dialogue we just engaged. Are there any questions on that right now? Can you just come up to a microphone anyway?
First off, I've been to the fire station enough to know it's an absolute embarrassment in terms of space. It really is, and we need to do something. Secondly, I worked in healthcare for almost 50 years as a nurse, and I've seen enough firemen come into the EDs with safety related injuries and also, more importantly, bad hazmat exposures. So I agree with that too. The third thing is training. I was in charge of training at Bay State for years, and it's one thing to go to formal classes, but every time on the units they'd have downtime. It's those quick impromptu, hey, look, we just did this. Can we do
Can't hear
something? Practice this
anything.
again in our downtime. So they need to do something with space. But two other points is, have we ever done any projections with what we're looking at for population along some of these timeframes? In houses, it could be more facilities built. Are we going to go downsize, population upsize? And those issues, there was one other, well, I lost it.
And the interwebs are messing with us again. Are we back? Okay. So that's the bad news portion of the presentation today. I think we get to the feedback opportunity. So if everybody, and at home you can do this too. If you use your cellular device to scan in that QR code, we dropped a number of them around the room. If you have one and want to share, that would be great. But it gives you the opportunity to give your feedback directly, and we'll see it on the screen. I'm not scanning it because you don't care about my feedback, so. Yes. Do you have a comment you'd like to share while everybody's getting their QR code in there? Come on, please.
Okay. Right. I want to actually thank the fire department, because I think everyone realizes that something has to be done. Okay. They do an awesome job. It's been that building has been in neglect for years, and we're not saying, or I personally feel, and the people I'm speaking with, something has to be done. Our population, like I just looked up your population, if you say you live in a small town, we're half the size. We have less than 5,000 people. We have a good percentage. I had heard roughly 30%. I'm not sure how accurate that is, are an elderly population living on a fixed income. I think it's going to be very difficult to come up and jump right into a new building. I would like to see, I think this may eventually happen, but I would like to see a little more concerted effort to see what exactly is needed, how much square footage we're talking about that we need, and to get a good evaluation of alternatives and lay all of them on the table, all the different options, with one being the new building. But I want to see what other buildings we have in town that could be utilized. That might cost even more to renovate. I don't know, but I'd like to have a good, accurate account of what the square footage. We have very few fires in town. I'm not saying that we don't need to train and be ready for them when they happen. But I think we're jumping the gun just a little bit, and I'd like to see some concrete numbers as to what is actually needed versus what is wanted in a perfect world when we have an open pocketbook. But we are in a recession, or that's what they say, and things are tough. So I think to keep the townspeople fair to them and their pocketbooks, we have school system that's suffering. We have a lot of issues, and it's a really hard place to be. And I'm not discounting any of the work that you've done and the report from 2020. I'm not saying that it's not needed, but I'd like to see a good dedicated investigation of what we actually need. We definitely need a decontamination, all of that. But I think it can be accomplished in a couple different ways. And I think the town needs to investigate that. And to be fair to the taxpayer, before, if we had an open pocketbook, hey, who wouldn't want a brand new firehouse with all the bells and whistles, But we are less than 5,000 people with 30% elderly. So it's a tough spot. And that's just my request to the town, is to make a good effort to find out what we actually need. And I don't want to keep repeating myself because I do, but that's my point and my point of view.
And I am going to say, I do appreciate your feedback. My job here today and my contract with the town is not to sell you on one solution or the other. If the town shakes my hand at the end of tonight and says, thank you for the effort, okay, that's fine. But I do design public safety buildings for a living. And I do like to see communities do the best for their emergency responders that they can. But I also understand that what they can do changes with the community. And so that's why we have these conversations. For many, many years, and when I was a youngster doing public safety architecture, we do the program and we sell the community on it. And we didn't engage in the conversations like this. And, the fact that we are engaged in a conversation like this is I think is a big step forward. Can there be a phase where we're exploring options, other options is done? Yeah, that is a possibility. And I think that's the kind of feedback that we're looking to hear from this exercise. Because, I recognize, I got, when I went through the exercise with Rebecca here to try to downsize the program, I wanted to see the number downsize dramatically too. But I don't make the market. I don't set construction. I don't build the buildings. I just design. And the market tells us what they cost. It doesn't mean that's what this community has to do. That means that this community needs to think about what they're going to do. And so I feel exactly what you're saying. And I'm hoping that this dialogue is helping us to get to a point where we can make decisions together. And that means the fire department, the citizens, the municipal government can get on board and make decisions together. So I hope that's coming through with this. If it's not, I wanted to say that. At this point, I have not been charged with designing anything. For this exercise, I was charged with having the conversation to understand where the community stands on this. Now, there is an option that I presented in my fee proposal that could look at doing a conceptual design based on the results of this exercise. That's up to town administration to decide if they're going to it could be anything. Yeah. Based on this feedback that we've had, if it wasn't an addition renovation, I'd be surprised. We did hear, the possibility of exploring other options. You have municipal government that is also listening to this conversation, and they may choose to direct me to explore one or more options, or they may shake my hand and say, thank you very much. And put this aside. It's I can't express how important it is to just get this dialogue out here, because so many communities in my career haven't had the opportunity to do this at this level. So I think it's a great thing and an important thing. So as everybody, oh yes, sir. Well, the ranges we did, we actually looked at, some renovation cost per square foot. So on the lower end of the range, it makes some assumption of using portions of the existing building. Again, my charge at this point has not been to design anything. So I can't send it to an estimator, huh? I'm sorry, I missed.
Okay. Thank you. I think that the existing building, I leave that some of it alone. Because even to get.
Oh, somebody's asking, do you have anything you could present to us right now for the renovation of our building?
So So imagine this, we can do this with a house because we've already had that analogy earlier in the evening. Imagine that right now you live in a 1,500 square foot Cape with, maybe it's got 2 small bedrooms upstairs and 1 downstairs. It's got a living room. It's got maybe a little dining room kitchen thing. Yeah. So, and then, something changes in your life and you now suddenly have more kids in the house. This has happened to me. And so you need more bedrooms. You can sit there and say, I need 4 bedrooms. I need 5 bedrooms. I need 2 baths. You can write a list of the space needs. That's the exercise that we've gone through. Now you can take a look at your 1,500 square foot Cape and ask yourself, okay, this is what I've got. Do I have the site? Do I have the capacity to take my space needs and solve it using the building I have? Or do I need to go find a new site and build a new building? And yes, you can do additions. You can, change the layout and accommodate those space needs by doing renovation additions. So coming to an understanding of what space needs we agree on is not the same as deciding whether or not we're building a new building or doing a renovation addition. What it's simply saying is this is the stuff that we think we need. Now, how do we go and solve that? I'm working on that one myself right now. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm working on the empty nester problem myself right now, so I feel you there.
Everyone, selectmen have not made a decision to build a new building. In fact, I can say, well, now the orientation has been, what do we do with the existing building to provide space and improvements that we need? Don't go away thinking that a decision has been made for new construction. That is absolutely not the case. In fact, it hasn't even been talked about. So.
That's that, our old, was mayor, but he's been our
Thank you.
for a while. He's like a retired something or other.
Was he a judge or something?
I don't know. He was a mayor, I think.
So we do have a question that came in on the chat. I'm going to ask Rebecca to read it. And I think this is a question for the fire department.
The question that came through on the chat was how many times in the last year have the volunteer firefighters been called to a fire between 5 PM and 8 AM? So the overnight
Yeah,
shift.
good question.
How many times in the past year?
Probably 0.
I don't have those exact numbers off the top of my head, but I would be able to put them on Facebook or public on the website or something. Or I do know if you go into town report, you'll have a list of fires that we have done for a year, but it doesn't have the time frame on it. But that's a good option. Maybe we can do that this year in the town report, provide a time frame of calls.
Well, why would
But I do know a great number of them do happen after 5 o'clock.
That is a
in the
very-
evening.
How many
fires we have?
Thank you,
Okay.
Chief.
In all, how many fires did we have in all?
All right, so we're going to do this, this live poll and see what kind of results we get. And then we'll have a little bit follow-up discussion from there. So if everybody's scanned in their QR code. All right. This is the one we showed you what your feedback was. We showed you how we tried to respond to it. This is a test of whether we did that well or not. So do you think the options reflect your feedback? That's the question.
Only 10 people answered.
I'm going to call in my technical experts because
Because see, you got a bunch of.
I'm
older
lucky to find my phone.
You know, you just got a lot of older people. Who don't know how to, you know, I'm lucky I'm doing what I.
We do have
Yeah,
paper copies.
The thing is, sometimes we have to remember that maybe you don't buy the horse, the saddle before the horse.
Yeah.
So what are we doing as far as supplying water to these equipment? What can we do better to have the fire department?
Do you want me to put that in?
Yeah. Will they say your name?
So far, we have 15 respondents here. I think there's more than 15 people in the room.
Are we doing what?
What are we doing as far as supply the fire department with water? How much water, you know, because they only as good as the.
There's a question on the floor about whether it would make sense to do a smaller substation rather than
What are we doing
expanding
as
the
far as supplying
headquarters.
fire department with water?
I would invite the chief to respond to that, but what we do find, particularly with volunteer organizations, that it's more effective to use a single station because there's, quite frankly, there's a camaraderie that goes along with the volunteerism if they're all coming to the same station and working together. But that is a possibility. Chief, do you have any feedback on that? The question was, is there, the possibility of a small substation to satisfy the needs make any sense?
I think the possibility of small substation, the town's small enough. I don't think we need 2 stations. I think there'd be a lot more money for the cost of building a second station. It's an idea that I mean, the architect might have come up with that design. I don't know, or if there's space for one, if the town owns space. I'm not, it's a good question. I haven't thought about that, but I don't see it being less expensive for what we could do.
So has everybody got their votes in? Anybody still working through that? Okay.
What are we doing as far as supplying the fire department with water? From a utility standpoint or from a?
Yeah, the fire department is served with a well. I'm not sure what the nature of that question is after. I mean, Chief, are you doing your truck fill off that well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the well is the sole source of water at this point.
So if
No, I'm getting a no from the audience here.
No, the fire station is tied into the public drinking water system right
okay.
now. Only bathrooms and basins, not the truck fill. The truck fill is still off our well that's on site. If it's a large fire, we usually go to a river or a pond or something or a neighboring town's hydrant to fill up several trucks. or if we already have a water supply established, we won't break it down until our trucks are filled and brought back to the station. But if it's a small fire, then yes, we fill at the station, a couple 100 gallons or 300 gallons, something. In the next 10 years, I mean, okay, the question was the next 10 years, what equipment would need to be upgraded? I do know that the tanker, our tanker truck is at close to the end of life. That would be the next truck that would need to be upgraded. I don't see any, besides the truck, we do need a new SCBA Cascade filling machine. That has been around for about 15 years now. Our SCBAs have a few more years before they need to be replaced, but those aren't as large as a piece of apparatus would be. I think that's what you're saying is the bigger cost. Yeah, the tanker truck's a 1990 right now. So that would be the next age to go.
So I want to move on in the questions here, but I do want to stop one brief sec. There's 6 votes that say the options do not reflect the feedback. If any of those people that are no votes are in the audience, would anybody willing to share on what we missed? Okay, no takers. If you want to share with me off mic, that would be great as well, because I do want to understand what we failed to understand. All right, so let's go to the next one.
She's so good.
All right, here's the value question. You know, we presented you to 3 options. We tried to give you an understanding of how they weighed in. You know, we're looking for what's your feedback. Which one do you prefer of the 3 that were presented? And thank goodness, I thought we were going to get another tie there for a minute. I think we addressed that in a bit here. Again, it is not new construction. We're talking about the program, not whether it's new construction or not. Did I have before? 17, 13. All right, a few people I think are still plugging in their votes there because I think we had 17 responses last time. All right, I don't see any more new votes coming in. I'm sitting here with 15 votes at the moment. And everybody's leaning towards the middle option at the moment. So let's look at the next question. All right, so if you could customize any of those 3 options. So right now, we had 9 votes for the middle option, option 2. And this is a sort of a scalar thing here. So you can, it's a slide bar. So if you would, you know, if you land in the middle, then you'd say leave it alone. If you land to the left, you'd say decrease it, or is that correct? And if you land to the right, it would be increase. So I'm trying to give you the option to customize the options that we did. So if everybody that voted for, well, you know, everybody. Yeah. So, you know, we had a majority saying option 2. What would you change in option 2 to make it even more customized to what you're looking for? Again, the majority vote was option 2, so I would start there. This is just giving you another chance to fine tune the things that you agree with versus the things that you disagree with. I know how many responses. Is that it? 8? I'd give it a little longer since I only have 8 responses. Everybody got their vote in? Nope, I see somebody still working on the phone. We'll give it a little bit longer. Go ahead.
So 0 means you would decrease the square footage from what we've currently shown. The 1 for the middle option would be no change, and then the 2 where the far option to the right would increase.
It's also at the bottom. It's at the bottom on the sheet, under here, what each column means. Normally we put the top and on the bottom. Don't worry. It's right on the side to what you need.
Says I have 18 responses. Some are doing it on paper, so we'll put those in later. All right, do I have another one?
Yeah. Are we good?
Mhm. All right, this is, the teacher evaluation thing you always get at the end of a class. Do you think this process was helpful? It's called Mentimeter. I'm closing. Because
Sorry.
all right, so I'm going to ask again. 40% say this exercise was not helpful in establishing the need. Can I get an understanding of why that's the response?
So the only reason I said no is because I think your slides don't have enough of information that makes the person reading the slide understand what they're actually looking at. So where you're talking and you're sharing information about existing, but talking about whether it's new or amending or changing, I don't think there's enough information for the person who's looking at your slides and voting to understand what they're actually voting for.
Okay. Anyone else?
I said no also. Because it wasn't what I expected. I mean, I think you did a great job making your presentation and it was informative. But I wasn't expecting a presentation. I was expecting, we need to address the fire station. The need is the fire station. And what do we do about it? These are the options.
Okay.
That's what I assumed.
And you don't feel like that's what we presented? You don't feel like that's what we presented? Why not?
I could have moved, but you're okay. But so that's what I thought. But I thought your presentation was great. I thought your voice is fabulous. It- your smile is quick. A lot of good things going on here. However, it wasn't what I expected. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying. You know, the challenge is that, you know, to design every option and put it forward, unfortunately, also costs a lot of money. And so we were endeavoring in this exercise to give you a lot of say about what the scope, the you know, what was included in the fire station, or would not be included in the fire station, so that it could refine a future design exercise.
So then maybe the problem is the presentation of what was going to happen. Maybe this sheet should have been differently expressed so that it said, come and discuss what you feel the fire station would be in your community. That's what we really did, right? Didn't we?
Okay.
We didn't really decide what we needed for a fire station. We just decided, in a way, I don't know. I might be the only one that felt that way. If all the rest of you understood what was going on, it's me.
I thought it was good.
Who asked you? Thank you. He's very pushy. He's always been pushy.
So I will submit, I do think that the community, the participants in the community, the ones that participated in these meetings have gone a long way to speaking about what they do think should be included in the fire station. Have they established whether or not there's a specific solution yet? No, I agree, they haven't. The next rational step, should there be another step, and again, because of those numbers, maybe there isn't yet, or maybe it's a different next step. But the next rational step, I would think, would be to say, okay, you've got a building here. You've got basically a program here that, you know, members of the community have weighed in on. What can we do with it and what's it going to cost? You know, we have worked with communities where we've done a couple options. You know, like I said, design time costs money too. And I'd love to be able to give free design time to everybody, but it can't. Yeah, if there's another grant, yeah, that would help. Yeah. So what we try to do is talk about a lot of this stuff up front so that we can refine and spend less money doing design options, more focused on what you really think the need is. And so that's what we were after here. And I'm sorry if we didn't express it appropriately on the flyer. Thank you. Yes, you have another comment there?
In the future, a tanker truck. So we have something to start with as far as what square footage for that bay and what other equipment that needs to be in that program, and then where the decontamination. I mean, we got stuff to work with tonight. So I think it was really a positive thing. So we have, you know, at least a little bit more of an idea of what we need. Like I had no idea about the different decontamination room and the oxygen. And so now we have a better understanding of what is needed. Maybe there's another building in town that can accommodate all of it. I mean, we have a couple, there's just alternatives. And I guess before at least we have a footprint of what needs to be done, and we can look at all the alternatives and weigh the pros and cons. That's all I'm asking. We need a new tanker. How big is that? You know, what square footage are we going to need for the vehicles and the equipment? I mean, we have stuff to work with now.
Mhm.
I think that I do, for a better understanding of what we're gonna need to accommodate a good fire department for a small town
Thank you.
with a
Thank
few
you.
fires.
There's one other.
And I would
She
like
has
to
some
say that I
ideas.
appreciate this approach because at least we're getting a chance to look at what's needed and what options. Being involved in another situation, I don't think it's being looked at the same way as this is being looked at, and I appreciate this very much. I think it's very important to look at both sides.
Do you have a estimate of cost per square foot?
Yeah, we actually use those in developing those ranges.
Okay.
Um,
I could just. I
we
could
were
picture it
seeing
from what you gave.
from
me.
a hard construction cost. Becca, help me here. For a new construction. And then we'll.
So from the costs presented tonight, so I'm going to dive into a little bit of detail. So just bear with me for a second. Those are total project costs. So they are not just the hard construction costs. They also include all of the other required costs to make a project happen, including design fees, testing fees, advertising fees, right? There's a lot that's required, legal fees, and it also includes contingency because we understand working with towns and cities, you get to ask for money once and there's no going back to the well. So we want to make sure that that budget accommodates for unknown conditions that may occur during construction. So it's kind of three different pieces of money in that budget. Your hard cost, which is your brick and mortar, the actual building cost. Then you've got all those soft costs, as development costs, and then you've got the contingency. So from a hard cost standpoint, and it's important to understand when you're talking about cost per square foot, what is included in that number. It's very common that we're at meetings similar to this where they'll say, oh, there was a project in such and such a town, a few towns over, and this is the cost per square foot. Understanding, did that include site costs? Was that the total project cost? Was that just the construction bricks and mortar cost? It's really important to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So from a cost per square foot standpoint, we are typically talking about hard construction costs. It's the bid you receive from your contractor divided by your square footage. So those costs range for new construction. Typically what we're seeing now is anywhere between $600 and $650 a square foot. For a renovation, we're seeing costs slightly less than that, ranging in around that $400 to $450 a square foot. That varies on your specific condition. It varies on the solution. It varies on the required site work. Is it a developed site? Is it an undeveloped site? So there's a lot that goes into the variations within those numbers, but those are generally the hard costs we are seeing for this type of construction. I hope that answers your question.
And just to give you a sense that we talked about escalation calculation, when I started doing this, the very first public safety building I did came in at $90 per square foot. It is a vastly different world from when I started.
And that also kind of reflects back to the previous conversation, is that square footage is your greatest cost driver in facilities of this nature. If you reduce the square footage, even 100 square feet, and Jeff and I have presented to this at national conferences, 100 square feet trickles down in that overall total project cost. It's not just that $500 for that 100 or whatever that square footage is. It then, things build on that. That is escalated, that the contingencies or percentages built on that. So what was originally $100 a square foot is actually $130 a square foot. So it's the easiest way to manipulate or to effectively change your total project cost. So square footage is your greatest opportunity to kind of determine that overall project budget. It's not like residential construction where you change the finishes. You go from a granite countertop to a different type of solid surface countertop, and it's going to have a extreme impact on the budget. For facilities like this, that is a much smaller proportion of the total project cost. Square footage is going to have a much larger impact. So it is different than residential construction in that way.
So we are at the end of our presentation. We'll wait to see if there's any other comments come in, but we'll digest this information and have some conversations with the town leadership. And I'm sorry. Oh, the chief has a comment.
I just like to thank Tecton and you guys coming out this evening. I think this is great. I'd like to see more projects done this way. I think it's very educational to people. If you don't understand what happens at the fire station, it's a great opportunity. You covered everything very well. I understand if it's the first time you're seeing it, it could be a little confusing. But I thought you did a great job. I like to see more projects in town done in this fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, chief. Appreciate the comment. Yes, sir.
Of the recording. So a copy of presentation,
Absolutely.
which I will put on the website so people take another look and help the process of making decisions.
And then at some point in the future, we can have a conversation about where, if anywhere, we go from here. Okay. Thank you so much for your participation. As I said earlier, it's sometimes difficult to get feedback, but we do appreciate everybody that participated either in person or online. Have a great evening.